Good afternoon. My name is Shola Salako, and I'm a professional trustee at Dariada. Thank you and welcome for joining us today at See with a Trustee. We're going to talk about dashboards. Yes, they are actually happening. And I'm doing so with my trustee, Graeme Riddoch. Before I pass over to Graeme, just to let you know the agenda for today, you're welcome to ask questions as we go through the session. It will last for 30 minutes. We're going to cover what dashboards are, when they're coming on board, and how and the impact they're likely to have. As I said, we've got some questions already. You're welcome to ask more questions. And then finally, we'll have a call to action. What's that? Basically, that is what should trustees be doing and what they should take away from this short brief. I'm now going to hand over to Graeme. Thank you.
Thanks, Shola. Hopefully I'm live. For the resident technology expert, you'd have laughed if you saw me trying to get Firefox working a couple of minutes ago. So for my sins, I've got the dashboard brief in the business. And we're going to spend a happy 30 minutes or so looking at what dashboards are and some of the back-end implications. And to get started, I'd just like to run a very short little animation that the pension dashboard guys put together, because it frames what they are quite nicely. And then myself and Shola are going to have a bit of a chat about, what some of this stuff means in practice. So if we could run the video, please.
People holding multiple pensions, it can be tricky to get a clear and complete picture of your pensions. We set up the Pensions Dashboards Programme, or PDP, to tackle this challenge. Dashboards will be the place where you can view information about your pensions in a clear and simple format. But it takes a lot to make that happen. You begin your journey by navigating to a dashboard. Then you submit a request to find your pensions information, which is where things get a bit more involved. First, to keep your data safe, an identity service confirms that you are who you claim to be. You will be asked to give consent for your information to be used to perform research on your pensions and to authorize providers and schemes to send your pensions information to the dashboard for you to view. You can withdraw your consent at any time. Now the Pension Finder service takes over. Importantly, it is not a database. More like a switchboard, it never holds any personal or pensions data. The Pension Finder service sends your request to all pension providers and schemes, which return a unique identifier to the dashboard for each matching pension. Then, you can request the pensions information, which the providers and schemes will send directly to the dashboard, where only you can access it. Pensions data will need to conform to a new standard. We are developing this standard with feedback from users as well as government and industry stakeholders to ensure it works for everyone involved. To keep your data safe, the governance register will...
That's probably enough of that.
Okay, thank you. Graeme, as a trustee, it seems to me data is crucial here. It really is about data, how good the data we hold is, and what schemes will need to do so that they can make this information available to members. Are there any deadlines? And what specifically about data should we be considering as trustees?
Okay, thanks, Shola. So, not like we haven't rehearsed this, is it? But every time we do this, it's slightly different. So deadlines, plenty. There's a detailed what's called staging timetable, and that's when schemes have to be ready to attach to the pension dashboard infrastructure. And it starts next year. The biggest schemes, the big DB, the big DC master trusts will start to go in from June. And the staging dates are by scheme size. So you start from the really big stuff and you come down through 2024 into the back end of 2025, down to schemes with just 100 members. I think most schemes, apart from the very, very big ones, like British Airways, BT, got hundreds of thousands of members, will find that 2024 is most likely the date when they will need to be ready. And the reason for that is, I think it picks up one of the questions that we got, is that for the dashboard to work, someone has to be able to log in and they've got to find the pensions. And so the whole thing falls down if on day one you haven't got state pension in and you haven't got, the very big pensions, because people just basically will tune back out again. And it is definitely going to get used, because Denmark launched a similar pension dashboard about 2019. And I think they got something like 3 million hits. So 3 million individuals looking to see where the pensions were. And in fact, there was one individual user that hit the dashboard 900 times in one day. Goodness knows why, but they are, as you said, coming. They are going to get used, and schemes need to be ready at the appropriate point. Second bit, data. I guess there's two elements to this. So you've just seen in the diagram that someone validates their identity. They do that digitally. And then the finder server says, right, got someone called Shola here, and it fires a message to every single pension scheme in the UK that is in scope for this service. And that scheme then has to go, right, so we've got someone here called Shola, and that's her date of birth, that's her national insurance number, that's her last address. Have I got a match? And whether you have a match or not, you return a yes or a no message. So the first bit about data is that it's no good if it's in a filing cabinet on a fiche or on paper, because you have to have your records in a format that you can go in real time, yes, I've got Shola. So first thing is your records have to be digitized. Most schemes have done that. And if not, there's ways you can manage that. The second bit of data is the nasty bit, which is that once you said, yes, I've got this individual you're looking for, then you have to return what's called an estimated retirement income, whether it's a DB scheme or a DB scheme. And that's effectively the pension at date of leaving, if it's final salary, revalued correctly to the normal retirement date. And that number has to be returned. Money purchase, you're using the statutory calculation basis, and then you're pushing that number back up the dashboard. So the dashboards are not just about, yes, we found your pension. It's, yes, here's what we think it's worth at your normal retirement date. And intrinsically, if your data has got holes in it and you can't do that calculation, then that's clearly a big problem.
Thank you. While we're still on data, we had two questions that came in earlier about data. The first one is from Pauline Armitage, who says, given the problems with data for DB schemes, have we considered launching a dashboard with just DC scheme data to start with? I mean, what would you say to that?
There's a huge amount of pushback in the industry actually to slow this down. If you Google pension dashboard, you find something in 2016 when we were about to start. So you could just go off with the simpler stuff, but then a lot of research has been done with the end customer, and end customers kind of said, if I can't find my stuff there day one, then I'm not interested. I'm not coming back to look. Hence the kind of drive to get all the really big schemes and the master trusts and the third-party administrators to get their stuff sorted and up into the dashboard to give it that kind of scale.
Yeah, that makes sense. The second question on data is from Julie Walker, Barnet Waddingham. She said, is this industry dashboard ready in terms of data and benefit quality? Bearing in mind what you've just said, is the industry ready? So
I'll turn that one round. Question you could be asking yourself, whether you're a trustee, pensions manager, or an administrator, is if tomorrow you had to run for every single member in your scheme, not pensioners, because pensioners are at scope for dashboard. It's only people whose pension is to come into payment yet. But let's take a final salary scheme. Could you generate an accurate estimated retirement income figure black like that. And that gives you the measure of whether your dashboard ready or not, because the requirement of the dashboard is to serve up to the individual who's basically going, oh, there's my pension, what's it worth? You have to return an accurate calculation. And there's two sets of rules around that. So you can pre-calculate all these estimated retirement incomes and just hold them against the possibility that someone comes in and wants to see their pension, then you go, there it is. So you calculate it in advance. The number can't be more than 12 months old. And for DC, that's probably okay on the basis that you're annually calculating a DC value. So it's then just a question of finding a way to get that DC value up into the dashboard kind of infrastructure. Much harder for DB. Some schemes do generate annual retirement figures. Most don't. And if you were then to say, okay, if we had to, what percentage of members have we got a system that can calculate that number without having to go off to spreadsheets and off to the side? And you'll find that the very big schemes that spend a lot of money on automation probably got systems that are pretty good in that respect. But even some of the bigger schemes, you always hit a point where you go, how do I automate that calculation? There's only 10% of members affected. So tell you what, we'll park it. And when someone wants that number, we'll just have to work it out manually. Now, what the dashboard says about that is if you've pre-calculated a value and it can be within this 12-month age range, you serve it up immediately in real time, like within 3 seconds. I think it's a standard. If you haven't worked out a number in advance and Shola comes in and says, what's my final salary pension? And someone goes, oh no, Shola's someone we never automated the calculation for because she's got she's got an underpin and a barber window, and even worse, public sector, the McLeod judgment, we have to work out for Shola the better of career average or final salary, which is the reason that the public sector won't stage until 2024 to give them an extra year. But you have to go off and do Shola's calculation, and you've got 10 days to do that if it's DB, and then you put that number back up into the dashboard. So standing back and looking at things, data is always at the root of every problem in pensions, and we know that. It's just a given. Once your data is good enough, you've then got to say, is my calculation system good enough to generate an accurate number? Because you can't just shove any old number up, because trustees are on the hook for this. And there's some discussion at the moment of, for DB in particular, could you use a kind of simplified basis? So rather than tranching out and revaluing each tranche correctly, you just use a kind of simplified, it's kind of close but not right. And there's a lot of consultation on that, and most of the consultation responses I've seen are kind of saying, why would we serve a number to the member where we know the number's wrong? You know, you're only going to serve a number up if it's correct, otherwise you shouldn't do it. So that was a very, very long answer to your fairly short question there, Shola.
No, no, that's fine. It's a very involved exercise. One of the questions that comes to mind is, what are trustees' obligations around GDPR? Are there any legal? Because when I listened to that short clip at the start, it speaks about what members have access to, and it speaks about how members can access, how they give permission for their data. So yes, can you just briefly touch on what trustees' obligations are around GDPR? Do they have any, what legal liability do they have, for instance? Okay,
so that is a work in progress. There is a specific working party looking at the whole GDPR piece, because it's fairly complex. The thinking at the moment is everything in this architecture will be seen to be a data controller. From a trustee perspective, I think it's fairly straightforward. You've got to be entirely comfortable that any member data that's going into this infrastructure is secure and being handled correctly within GDPR requirements. So it's not just a question of just flinging a bit of information up into the pensions dashboard system. There's an awful lot of moving parts in there. So in a little video, it talked about and you've probably done this yourself, folks out there. So if you open a bank account nowadays, you generally will actually take a selfie and take a photograph of your passport or your driving license. And that online IDV is what drives the first stage of the pension dashboard process. Member has to give consent then to allow that information to be used and pushed down the way. So the answer is that it's complicated and it's not fully resolved. But I think trustees should sort of work on the premise that they are on the hook.
Oh, okay.
Sorry
Sounds
about
familiar. No, sounds familiar. Trustees are often on the hook. My the second thing that comes to on the back of that is, what is the dashboard doing around cybersecurity? Because for me, it seems to me that quite a lot of the information is quite sensitive information. Has anything been considered around cybersecurity?
Oh gosh, yeah, plenty. I mean, it's almost like the start point and the end point. So again, but from a trustee perspective or a pension manager perspective, you could just go, well, it's a government institution. I'm pretty sure they've got this right. And there's no real risk of me actually attaching to this thing, because the pensions dashboard, there's two-way risk. So when you as a pension scheme in the staging process attach to the pension dashboard, then the pension dashboard folks are going to go, right, so looking from their lofty position down the way, is that secure? So where is your pension scheme hosted? What's the environment? What's the security? How do we ensure that when you say, yes, I found a member, and you push a message up into the overall ecosystem, so it hasn't got a bit of malware on the back of it, which once it goes into the whole pensions dashboard system, is going to bring the whole thing down. So there's due diligence that will be required on schemes attaching up into the dashboard. And at the same time, trustees and pensions managers and professionals will have to be, convinced that by them attaching to the pensions dashboard, they're not actually bringing cyber security risk back to their scheme and their systems. Now, all sounds pretty horrific and daunting. One of the ways you can navigate that is there was reference in that little movie to something called an ISP, which is a service provider. And effectively, they will host your data. So you go, look, there's all my member data, there's all the dates of birth, there's the NINOs, there's all the information. I've worked out all my estimated retirement incomes in advance. Well done. Have them. And you push everything into this ISP, and then you go off and you get a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, wherever your preference is. And the ISP handles all the requests coming in from the dashboard service. So all you're doing is you're putting your information in and keeping it up to date, but the ISP gets to 3 million hits a day and has got the scale, the architecture, the security. They will handle all the penetration testing, all the requirements of the pensions dashboard, so the scheme doesn't have to handle it. And I think regardless of how big you are as a scheme, that's probably quite an attractive way to go. It's effectively middleware that means all you have to do is push your information in, and then you don't need to worry about anything past that.
Thank you, Graeme. I have a question from Simone, and the question is, the requirements build on existing disclosure requirements. Now, schemes are already subject to, but with the added benefits of users being able to see all their benefits in one place. She's right there, isn't she?
100%. I mean, it's kind of just an evolution of current requirements. I suppose the bit that for DB in particular, which is different, yeah, sure, people can ask, what's my pension, please? And they'll be told, yeah, we'll work that out. It might take us a couple of weeks or a month or whatever. With final salary in particular, it's no requirement to be able to return that number. And it's very testing for the industry. There's no doubt about it, because lots of schemes and third-party administrators are running their schemes on technology that's old. And its technology was never designed to do this stuff. Consequently, it's going to be a stretch. But the thinking is that this is phase one. And it's pretty rudimentary. Have you got someone called Shola? And these are her identifiers. And you go, yeah, I got a match, or I haven't got a match, or I think I've got a match because that's not the address. And actually, that's going to be a real issue because quite often those kind of things are not up to date. And then that's probably a phone call to the administrator, and then you have to do some offline validation to make sure that's actually who it is. But phase 2 could be great. Actually, Shola's not interested in retiring at NRD 65. She's interested in pension at 63. Can we have the pension at 63 figure, please? Oh, she's changed her mind. She's thinking she goes at 55. Can I have the 55? So it's quite a stretch for the industry to be able to create in bulk accurate estimated retirement incomes just for this initial phase. Logically, you as a dashboard user are going, oh, that's great. I can see everything. Can I retire at 60? Have I got enough money to retire at 60? Where's the button? Where's my button for retire at 60? And at the moment, the thinking is that dashboards, you will not be able to take the data up and manipulate it. So you can't go, well, I got a pension at 65. I'll have a go at working that back for Shola and see if I can tell her what it might be. You're not allowed to do that. You've got to go back to scheme and say, hello, kind of another figure. Now, that's definitely phase 2. The requirement is only a pension at retirement date, but you can see how the whole thing will evolve if it's going to be genuinely useful for the customer.
Thank you. That's really
frightening.
That's really, yeah. If I were an administrator, yes, it's quite possible. We have a question from an anonymous attendee, and the question is: do you have to apply assumed future evaluation? This goes back to I think this goes back to the answer you gave earlier.
Yeah, so absolutely. So the money purchase basis, it's the statutory basis, but it's up for a bit of a fine tune to ensure it's consistent. So that if you get an illustration from Legal and General of what your fund is going to be worth, and they've used a slightly different basis, and then you look at the dashboard, the numbers don't marry. So there's consultation on DC to have a uniform basis for estimating retirement benefits. For DB, you've got to use your scheme-specific factors and revaluation rates, whatever they happen to be. Although, as I say, the consultation does look at, could we do something generic or simpler, like, let's just say that bit's level, that bit goes up a bit, and that bit goes up a bit more. From a calculation point of view, that's probably not any better than doing the correct revaluation of the tranches on the correct rates. And if you do use that simplified basis, you're potentially serving up a number which doesn't marry up with the figure the member got the last time they asked for it. So I think the drift will be, you've got to get this number right and use accurate revaluation rates.
One of the things that comes to mind as a trustee is, do we have any idea of how much this will add to admin costs? Because this, will it be a reflection of how much work they've already done on the system, or I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, because every scheme is different. So some schemes, not many, have got, top quality weapons grade data. It's just the bee's knees, not a hole in it. And they've got a calculation system that'll go, come on then, a bit like Neo in the Matrix, come on then, what do you want to know? And it can do it like that. So if that's you, well done. You're probably 1% of the pension schemes in the UK. And then you're coming back to, we've got pretty good data, but not universally good data. Is there a cost to fix that? Probably. Do you try and fix everything for dashboard? Because who knows, maybe no one actually hits that finder button and asks you for a pension figure. So maybe you decide you will actually fix data and do calculations within this 10-day service standard for DB, 3 days for money purchase. So there's data. You might fix it all in advance. You might just accept you got holes. And then if someone asks, you're going to run fast to fix it and return the number. Almost certainly, whether you're working with a third-party administrator or your in-house admin, your software provider has got costs associated with building the attachments into the infrastructure. So there could well be costs for that. So I personally have only started to see one of the big TPAs out of the blocks already going, it's going to cost you. You know, it's like when you get the builders in, they go, "Ooh, who built this?" You know, and it's very expensive, very expensive. So yeah, and your share of that very expensive looks like. So I've seen that starting already. And what I would say is, you know, be on the front foot with this stuff and start talking to your administrator, to your TPA, to your software provider, and start asking them some questions.
Oh, thank you. In fact, you've led me nicely onto my final question, is what should the trustees be doing? What should be, what's our call to action to the trustees listening to this?
Okay, good. Again, it's almost like we've rehearsed this, isn't it? So the first thing you need to know is, when does your scheme stage? And you can go to the pension dashboard site and you'll find all the detail there. Most schemes, as I say, think probably off the hook until 2024, unless you've got a big one or a master trust. The next one is start looking at your data. Is it all digitized? Is it a format that can be interrogated? And is it good enough? And good enough is a very broad kind of thing, but you know, good enough to actually do an accurate calculation from. And then the next question is, if your data is okay, will your system be capable of running the estimated retirement income calculations? What percentage? Can you do all? Can you do none? I mean, I've seen some very old systems that can't do a single estimated retirement calculation. So you need to look at what percentage of your calculations you can automate. And if it's not enough, you need to start thinking about that. And then you just need to talk to your administrator, your platform provider, and get a credible plan. So rather than going, it's fine, it's under control, we've got it bagged. Why? How? When? You know, you want to see a roadmap for your scheme in particular, where you can make sure all these things are ticked off so you've got comfort. And if you don't get that, then you want to start thinking about a plan B, because whilst there's still consultation going on the dashboard, it's definitely coming. And the government doesn't seem minded to actually accept that the industry is finding this difficult. It feels like they will push this through.
Thank you. I'm just checking to see if there's any questions, any further questions. No, I don't think there is. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me as if whatever we do as trustees, we have to prepare, because from what I also read, there's fines if you're not if you don't comply. So we can't forget about it. We do have to take action, and I hope that this whistle-stop tour of Pension Dashboard has been helpful in at least helping you to think about and framing some of the things you need to think about and some of the next steps you need to be considering. Thank you.